Hello students, in the previous video we saw about the conduction of electricity in metals, okay, and we saw about the concept of the different conduction bands, right, in metals, semiconductors and insulators. Now we will see a little bit into conduction of electricity in semiconductors, okay. Now as we saw in the last video, the gap between the valence band and conduction band is small. Therefore, some of the electrons may jump from valence band to conduction band, and some conductivity is observed in semiconductors. Okay, so what happens here is the electrical conductivity of semiconductors increases with increase in the temperature. Okay, why? Because more electrons can jump from valence band to the conduction band. Such type of conductors are called as intrinsic semiconductors. The semiconductors whose electrical conductivity increases with temperature are called as intrinsic semiconductors. The examples, very good examples for this is silicon and germanium. Okay, the pure substances such as silicon and germanium whose electrical conductivity increases with increase in temperature are called as intrinsic semiconductors. Now you have to know one more concept called as doping. Okay, what is doping? Now in the conductivity of these intrinsic semiconductors sometimes is very low at room temperature. Okay, they do not conduct electricity. So their conductivity, when it is increased by adding an appropriate amount of suitable impurity, okay, that process is called as doping. Okay, so here we are talking of semiconductors only, okay, not insulators. Semiconductors, to enhance their conductivity, an impurity is introduced. Okay, now again, that impurity is or on the basis of the impurities, the semiconductors are of two types, because the impurity can be electron rich or it can be electron deficient. Now you may ask how these electron deficient things will add to electrical conductivity, that we will see. Okay, but based on these we are classifying them into two types, that is N-type semiconductor and P-type semiconductors. This may seem very lengthy and boring to understand while reading, but if you make kind of a flowchart point wise, it is pretty easy to understand and it is pretty easy to remember also. Okay, you can easily remember this. Okay, all conductivity in metals, what makes them very good conductors, the valence band, conductivity band in insulators, metals. Make a flowchart of all this. Okay, then what are intrinsic semiconductors, what is doping, what is two types of doping, and so on. You don't have to necessarily know everything at the first go. Just make a flowchart, know the points, and then go in detail. Okay. Okay. So there are two types of semiconductors, as I said, N-type semiconductors and P-type semiconductors. Now here there are three pictures, as you can see. This is a perfect crystal. This is just a representation of how a perfect crystal should be. Okay. Now, if you add electron-rich impurities, then you get a N-type semiconductor. Okay. And if you add electron deficient impurities, you get P-type semiconductors. Okay. Now, what do you mean by this and how does it work? Okay. Like for example, I will show you the example here. Okay. So when we say N-type, consider the example of silicon or germanium doped with group 15 elements like phosphorus or arsenic. Okay. Now when we are talking of group 15, we should know the meaning of each and every word here. Group 15 elements. Now what is the valency of group 15 elements? Can you recollect this? what is the general electronic configuration? Valence shell. Ns2, yes, Np3, right? 15, 5 electrons in the valence shell. So it is Ns2, Np3. So how many electrons it has in its valence shell? 5, right? So they contain 5 valence electrons. So what happens? Now this you consider is a silicon crystal. If it is doped with arsenic, which is in group 15, for example, what happens? They will occupy some of the lattice sites in the silicon or germanium crystal. Now this has 5 valence electrons, correct? Out of these 5 valence electrons, 4 valence electrons will be used in bond formation, and 5th electron is not used in the bond formation and it is considered as extra, right? And hence it becomes delocalized. It freely moves here. So that is what we want, right? So we want an extra electron so that it contributes to conduction of electricity. So its electrical conductivity is increased because of the extra electrons contributed by this group 15 elements. Hence, the silicon doped with electron-rich impurity is called as the N-type semiconductors. Okay. Now, what happens in electron-deficient impurities? Okay. Again, look at the example. The same element, silicon or germanium, if it is doped with group 13 elements like boron or aluminium. You should know by now what are group 13 elements, group 14 elements, you know. Group 15 elements also you know. We have covered that chapter, right? P block elements. Group 13 elements like boron or silicon. What is the valency of this? Group 13. Last number is 3. Ns2, Np1. 3 valence electrons. Correct? So what happens? Here, as usual, that boron will go and occupy any vacant lattice site in the silicon crystal. Now what happens? It consists of only 3 valence electron, and in the place of the 4th electron here, can you see this? Positive hole is created. So here there is a hole which is created. So this is also called as an electron hole or an electron vacancy. Now what will happen? In this electron hole, an electron from the neighboring atom or a neighboring site will come and occupy that electron. Okay, it will, but in doing so, it will leave an electron hole at its original position. Right? In this way, the hole moves through the whole crystal lattice like a positive charge, giving rise to electrical conductivity. So what happens when an electric field is applied? The electrons move towards the positively charged plate and electron holes move towards the negatively charged plate. Hence, the silicon and germanium doped with electron deficit impurities are called as P-type semiconductors. Okay. So understood what do you mean by N-type and what do you mean by P-type of semiconductors? Remember the 2 examples, they are pretty simple. Okay. Okay. So now you have to know a few applications of the N-type and P-type semiconductor diodes. Okay. Mainly they are used for making electrical components. Okay. So that is a broad use of that. They are used for making diodes. What is a diode? A diode is a combination of N-type and P-type semiconductors, and it is used as a rectifier. Sorry, this is not rectified, it is rectifier. Okay. So this is the definition of diode. These are used for making diodes and photodiodes. Okay. Okay, before moving, what do you mean by rectifier? Yes. So rectifier is detecting or amplifying the radio or audio signals. Okay. So like, yeah, you know what are transistors, right? So transistors are made from these diodes. So combination of N and P type, NPN or PNP type of transistors will be made by sandwiching one layer of semiconductors between two layers of semiconductors. So okay, they are basically used to detect or amplify the radio or audio signals. That is what is meant by rectifier. Okay, so only you have to remember what is a diode. It is a combination of N-type and P-type of semiconductors, and it is used as a rectifier. Photodiode. Photodiode is the diode which converts light energy into electrical energy. Now what is this? Where is it used? It is used in solar cells, okay, to convert solar energy into electricity. And the example here is silica. Amorphous silica is used as a photodiode. These are the applications of the magnetic properties. Okay. So that completes your electrical properties. Okay. Now we will be moving on to your magnetic properties. This is the last subtopic of this chapter, that is the magnetic properties. So you have a rough idea on how magnets behave by now, right? So what is a magnet? Magnet is one which shows a north pole and a south pole. This any basic high school student will tell you. So magnetic properties, what exactly gives the magnet its properties, right? So if you go down and down to the atomic level of any element, okay, it is the electron which is giving rise to the magnetic properties, electron and a proton. Okay, now every electron, like see this diagram. Okay, so here this is the nucleus and this is the electron which is revolving around the nucleus, just like the earth revolves around the sun and rotates about itself. You can imagine that, yeah. So every electron behaves like a tiny magnet. Okay, so and every electron has two types of motions. That is, first is its orbital motion around the nucleus and its spin around its own axis. This is figure B. Okay, so this is the orbital motion and this is the electron direction or the spin. Okay, so what happens now? Electron is a charged particle. It has got what type of charge? Negative charge, right? Electron is a charged particle. So what happens when it is moving here? As it is moving, it can be considered, its motions is considered as a loop of electric current, okay, which possesses a magnetic moment. Okay, you have studied this, right? The magnetic moment, Fleming's left hand rule, right? And which direction is the magnetic moment, you know. So it generates a magnetic moment which has a definite value for every element. Okay, so it generates a magnetic moment. So every electron has a permanent spin. That electron will spin in the same way and an orbital magnetic moment associated with it. Okay, so the magnitude of that magnetic moment, mu b, is given is its unit is Bohr magneton, that is mu b, which is equal to 9.27 into 10 raised to minus 24. Okay, so this is about the basic of how magnetic properties arise in a metal. Based on the magnetic properties, solids are classified into 5 types of magnets. Okay, so the first 2 types are diamagnetic and paramagnetic. Now these definitions are really important. Okay, when I say in future, when I will be talking about transition elements, or when I will be talking about d block elements, any periodic table or any elements in for that matter, if I say diamagnetic in nature, you should be able to recollect what is diamagnetic. I don't want the confusion. Okay, so diamagnetic means those substances which are weakly repelled by an external magnetic field. This is the external factor, right? So this is its physical property, kind of. They are repelled by an external magnetic field, weakly repelled. Why it happens is important. Why? Because they have all the paired electrons. right? You have studied about the valence electrons. Some electrons are paired. They have the opposite spin, and some are unpaired, right? Some of the electrons are unpaired. Sorry. So when an element possesses all the paired electrons, that time it is diamagnetic. Di means two electrons paired. Okay, remember this, fix this in your mind. Okay, diamagnetic means they have all paired electrons and they are weakly repelled by an external magnetic field. What happens? Pairing of those electrons cancels all their magnetic moments and they lose their magnetic character. Important. Okay. Second, paramagnetic. Paramagnetic is weakly attracted by the external magnetic field. Para means they have one unpaired electron, no pairing, single electron in one orbital. Okay. This gives rise to its original magnetic moment, and hence they are weakly attracted. They have a north pole, they have a south pole, and hence they are attracted. These are called as paramagnetic. Examples you have to remember, all the ions as you can see, Fe3+, Cr3+, Cu2+. If you want, you can write the electronic configuration for homework. Cu2+. Write the electronic configuration, look at the atomic number of copper, and when it loses 2 electrons, what is its electronic configuration, whether there are unpaired electrons remaining or all are paired. You can see for yourself and check it out. Okay, so that will give you a clear idea of what is diamagnetic and paramagnetic. The last 3 types are, this is ferromagnetic, antiferromagnetic and ferrimagnetic. Okay, ferromagnetic are those substances which are strongly attracted by the external magnetic field, and this property is called as ferromagnetism. Okay, so about these ferromagnetic properties, the metal ions, these represent the metal ions. They are grouped together into small regions called as domains. Okay, which acts as tiny magnet. So what is represented in circles here, they are called as individual domains. Okay, so the metal ions, this one circle represents several metal ions. Okay, these are grouped into small regions. These are the domains. Okay, these individual act as tiny magnets. So what happens in an unmagnetized, means when no magnetic field is given, they are random. Okay, but if an external magnetic field is applied from here, for example, then all these domains will be oriented in the same direction. Okay, their magnetic moment gets cancelled. When a substance is placed in the magnetic field, all the domains are oriented in the direction of the magnetic field and a strong magnetic effect is produced. And these domains, important, these domains remain even when the magnetic field is removed and it becomes a permanent magnet. Example, iron. Okay, so remember what is ferromagnetism. This is antiferromagnetic. This structure is similar to this, but almost half of them are oppositely oriented. Okay, and hence cancel out each other's magnetic moment. They do not exhibit any magnetic properties. And ferrimagnetic are those in which the magnetic moments of the domains are arranged in parallel and anti-parallel directions in unequal number. Okay, these are not regular, they are random. And they are weakly attracted by the magnetic field than the ferromagnetic substances. And they also lose their magnetism on heating and become paramagnetic. Okay, this is ferrimagnetism. So I want you to refer to your textbooks and write the differences between all these 3 and let me know on this. Okay, comment on the video or on WhatsApp. So I have just shown the diagrammatic representation, the definitions, examples, you have to tell me. Okay, so this is the end of our solid state chapter. I will be sending a lot of questions for you, and we will be solving NEET and JEE questions also. So any difficulties, you can always contact me on WhatsApp. If you have not understood, I would suggest please watch the videos again and watch the videos in a sequence so that you understand all the concepts. Otherwise it will be Greek if you suddenly start watching one video. Okay, so we will meet in the video format for the next chapter. Till then I will be in touch with you with the question answers. Okay, thank you very much.